let's move on to the master detail app type. Typically, if you use Gmail, you've seen this on your iPhone Gmail account or your iPad. One half of the screen is occupied, or one third rather, is occupied by a list of your emails. And then the right-hand side shows you some of those details whenever you select an email. So this is known as a master detail view. And iPhone or iPad can adjust what it does with the master detail depending on the screen size. So if you're running this app on an iPhone, you wouldn't have this side-by-side view. You'd have a list. When you clicked it, it would push a new view on top of that list so you could read the email. So in Xamarin, let's create one. New solution, master detail app. And you can read there, this template creates a master detail app. It offers a user interface to display a list and then uses a nav controller and split view on iPad. And that's the technical name for that kind of view. It's a split view. Right, let's call this something like dummy2 and go ahead and create it. So far, we've worked with storyboards that are quite simple. For example, in our single view app. And you're about to see in a second what this storyboard in particular looks like. It's fairly complicated, but I'll walk you through it. Let's open up our main storyboard and then zoom out a little so we can see everything. And as you can see, we've got a mishmash of lots of different things happening here. First of all, we have a split view controller over on the left-hand side. And this inherits from the class UI split view controller. And this is the controller that orchestrates everything that's going on in this scene. That controller needs what's called a master view. So if we head over to this navigation controller where my cursor is, and then next to it we have another view controller. Now the reason for having a navigation controller is this is the unseen orchestrator of what happens inside of the master view controller. So if you select something in the master and you want to overlay a screen on it, the navigation controller is what takes care of that. So we have our master view controller here, and inside of Xamarin's default app, when you create this, this is going to show a list of dates and times. When you select one of those items, it's then going to show you a detail view controller, which is this one at the bottom right. And the detail view controller also has a navigation controller sitting underneath it, and that's in case you have something inside of the detail view controller that you want to select and then push another page on top of it. So we have this master detail relationship, and how does the split view controller know which is which? Well, the first one coming out of it has an index of 0, and the split view controller will assume that this is the master. If we click on the actual master view controller, you'll see its class is master view controller. Then the second one that comes out of this split view controller is this detail view controller at the bottom right. And when you click it, you'll notice its class is detail view controller. So of course, the master needs to know about the detail. And how does it know that? Well, let's open up the master view controller.cs. Inside here, you'll see we have the detail view controller set as a public variable. And if we scroll down, this line in particular inside of view.did_load says detail view controller is equal to, and I'll just scroll across, a detail view controller which comes from the navigation controller, split view controller, and then you can access the controllers coming out of that split view by using an index. So the detail is 1 and the master will be 0. So that's how we define the detail view controller from the master section. Also of note, inside of the master view controller constructor, we have this little section that says if the current device is equal to a pad, so iPad or iPad Pro, iPad Mini, and I believe in some cases this might also allow you to have the 6 Plus, but I'm not sure about that, so I'd advise you to check on that. So if this is an iPad, it requests that our content size is 320 wide by 600 high. But this is a preferred content size, so it's not set in stone necessarily, and it gives the system some freedom or some flexibility to move things around a little bit. Okay, that's enough talking from me as to what these things are. Let's run this on our iPhone 5. And you will notice we have the master view controller that pops up. We don't have that view that we had on the iPad. Let's see what happens if we do hardware rotate left. We still have the master. So on the phone, you'll only get one screen. Let's hit plus, and by default, Xamarin adds a list of dates and times to our list. Then if we click one, it opens up a detail view controller and tells us the time. So inside of the code, let's look at exactly what that's doing. The master view controller is running. We have a view did load. The view did load adds an add button, and that's the button at the top right that I was clicking. Every time something is added with that add button, we have an add new item method that inserts something into the table view. Now, of course, we have a table source, which you should be familiar with by now, that takes care of that table. We have our classic cell identifier, data source, etc. Now, if I scroll down, I'm looking for a particular section, and that is row selected. So when we select an item, it says if the current device is an iPad, then we can set the detail view controller with our items. And let's see what that looks like inside of our detail view controller. We have our set detail item method, which compares the detail item that it currently has to the one passed in. And if they're different, then it's going to update the view or configure it. And in our case, it simply puts a label that has the date and time. So that's a very simple view controller that is pushed onto our split view controller on the right hand side. So you've seen what this looks like in an iPhone. I'll stop it running there. Let's run this on the iPad Air 2. So if it's too big for your screen when it runs the simulator, hit Window, Scale, 50, and perhaps even smaller for this one. Let's try 25. You can use command numbers as shortcuts for the scales of your devices. Right, so let's open up our master. And if I select an item, you'll see that the detail section changes accordingly. Now, if I tap in the detail section, the default behavior is that the master goes away. I can either hit this icon at the top to show the master, or I can swipe in from the side to show the master. It's kind of tricky to do on the simulator. You have to get very close to the left side to do it. Or I can swipe to the left to get rid of it. Okay, let me stop that running. That is the basics of the Master Detail View Controller, and it's a very handy pattern to have if you're running on an iPad, because you can explicitly tell your users this is designed for iPad. And if you're into App Store optimization, any user that has an iPad is obviously going to prioritize an app that has this design pattern over one that's just designed for a phone.